Turn, if you will, in your Bibles to 1 Samuel chapter 9. Now there's a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zeror, the son of Bechorath, the son of Aphiah, a Benjamite, a mighty man of power. And he had a son whose name was Saul, a choice young man and a goodly, and there was not among the children of Israel a goodlier person than he. From his shoulders and upward he was higher than any of the people. And the asses of Kish, Saul's father, were lost, and Kish said to his son, "Take now one of the servants with thee, and arise and go seek the asses." And he passed through Mount Ephraim and passed through the land of Shalisha, and they found them not. And then they passed through the land of Shalim, and there they were not. And he passed through the land of the Benjamites, but they found them not. And when they were come to the land of Zuph, Saul said to his servant that was with him, "Come, let us return, lest my father leave caring for the asses, and take thought for us." And when he said unto him, that is the servant, "Behold now, there is in the city a man of God, and he is an honorable man. All that he saith comes surely to pass. Now let us go thither, peradventure he can show us our way that we should go." Then said Saul to his servant, "But behold, if we go, what shall we bring the man? For the bread is spent in our vessels, and there is not a present to bring the man of God. That what have we?" And the servant answered Saul again and said, "Behold, I have here at hand the fourth part of a shekel of silver that I will give to the man of God to tell us our way. Before time in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, thus he spake, Come, let us go to the seer. For that that is now called a prophet was before time called a seer." Then said Saul to his servant, "Well said, come, let us go." So they went to the city where the man of God was. And as they went up the hill to the city, they found a young maiden going out to draw water, and said unto them, "Is the seer here?" And they answered him and said, "He is, behold, he is before you. Make haste now, for he came today to the city, for there is sacrifice to the people today in the high place. As soon as ye be come into the city, ye shall straightway find him, before he go up to the high place to eat, for the people will not eat until he come, because he doth bless the sacrifice. And afterward they eat that be bidden. Now therefore get you up, for about this time ye shall find him." And they went into the city, and when they were come into the city, behold, Samuel came out against them for to go up to the high place. Now the Lord had told Samuel in his ear a day before Saul came, saying, "Tomorrow about this time I will send thee a man out of the land of Benjamin, and thou shalt anoint him to be captain over my people Israel, that he may save my people out of the hand of the Philistines. For I have looked upon my people, because their cry has come unto me." When Samuel saw Saul, the Lord said unto him, "Behold, the man whom I spake to thee of, this same shall reign over my people." Then Saul drew near to Samuel in the gate, and said, "Tell me, I pray thee, where the seer's house is." And Samuel answered Saul and said, "I am the seer. Go up before me into the high place, for ye shall eat with me today, and tomorrow I will let thee go, and will tell thee all that is in thy heart." Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we thank you once again for just a place to be. Father, we are warm, we are cozy. We have a nice building that we can meet in and open the words of God, and once again have opportunity for you to speak to each and every one of us. I thank you for these people that have taken time out of their schedule to come to church. I know life in this world is busy and hectic and crazy. And Father, people have to sacrifice something. And today they've chosen to be here. And I'm grateful for that. Pray that you would bless them for that. Ask you now just to help us to set aside the cares and the concerns of the world. Lord, there are many things that trouble our hearts, trouble our souls, trouble our minds. Just maybe to be able to put those things aside for a little while and give you an opportunity to speak to us, that, Father, some of those things that trouble us may actually fade away as we draw closer to you. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen. So we started here in 1 Samuel chapter 9, and I know that this week is Thanksgiving, and the normal thing to do would be to preach a message on thankfulness. I tried that. I tried to adjust this message to fit that line of thinking this would be great for a Thanksgiving message. And the title I came up with was something like this: "Lord, I'm thankful I'm not like Saul." And then Luke 18 popped into mind immediately. The Pharisee stood and prayed thus with himself, God, I thank thee that I am not as other men are, extortioners, unjust, adulterers, or even as this publican. And you know the rest of the story, right? So needless to say, the Lord has already gotten all over me before he ever deals with any of you. But I would like to interject a little Thanksgiving message here. You know what I really am thankful for, brethren? I am thankful that I've got a book right here that I can go to learn about myself, good and bad. Amen? Because I don't know about you, but I need that. So I've titled this message this morning. I really struggled with what to title it, but I finally had to put something on the slide before I came out here. And so I titled this message here this morning, Saul's Demise. And I'm not positive, but it's looking like it may wind up turning into a little series on Saul. But that's where we are. And while there are many things that we could look at and probably will, when it comes to Saul, I mean, there's a lot of stuff written about Saul. We know a lot of his weaknesses. We know a lot of things that he struggled about. We see a lot of things in Saul that the Lord put in this book for a reason. It was not that he just didn't like Saul and said, hey, let me air all of Saul's dirty laundry so that everybody for all eternity will know what Saul is struggling with. I don't think that's the reason at all. I think we find the things in the Bible that we find in the Bible because the Lord knew that we would need those things to help us, to encourage us, to guide us, to direct us, and to keep us on that straight and narrow path. So I titled this morning, Saul's Demise, and like I said, there are many things that led to his demise, but before we jump in and kind of get at the beginning of the process here, there is one thing that I would like to bring out that I would ask you to keep in mind as kind of an umbrella that covers all the things that we're going to be looking at with Saul. And that one thing that I would like you to keep in mind about Saul is, and this may seem a little hard, Saul was dense. It says in Isaiah, he said, go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, see ye indeed and perceive not. You know the passage, on and on and on, right? They see, but they didn't see. They heard, but they didn't hear. Saul struggled with that. Saul was dense. Now, dense, the definition of dense is slow to learn or understand. I mean, you know what I'm talking about. There's somebody who volunteered. That's me. He's my son-in-law, and I would agree. Another definition of dense is thick-headed. I've seen him smack his head on carpentry work. Didn't faze him a bit. But Isaiah 6:9, he said, go and tell this people, hear ye indeed, but understand not, see ye indeed, and perceive not. Make the heart of this people fat, make their ears heavy, and shut their eyes, lest they see with their eyes, and hear with their ears, and understand with their heart, and convert and be healed. There is a certain denseness about Saul. Let me show you what I mean. Turn, if you will, over to chapter 15, 1 Samuel chapter 15. First Samuel chapter 15, take a look down at verse 9. Okay, so Samuel's been talking with Saul. You got the Amalekites, you got Agag, go in. And in verse 3, he says, go and smite Amalek and utterly destroy all that they have and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. Again, very hard passage of Scripture. The Lord had the reason for doing it. But take a look at verse 9. But Saul and the people spared Agag, and the best of the sheep, and of the oxen, and of the fatlings and the lambs, and all that was good, and would not utterly destroy them, but everything that was vile and refuse, that they destroyed. Then came the word of the Lord unto Samuel, saying, It repenteth me that I have set up Saul to be king, for he has turned back from following me, and hath not performed my commandments. And it grieved Samuel, and he cried unto the Lord all night. And when Samuel rose early to meet Saul in the morning, it was told Samuel, saying, Saul came to Carmel, and behold, he set him up a place, and is gone about, and passed on, and gone down to Gilgal. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said unto him, Blessed be thou of the Lord, I have performed the commandment of the Lord. And Samuel said, What meaneth then this bleating of the sheep in my ears, and the lowing of the oxen which I hear? And Saul said, They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared of the best of the sheep and of the oxen to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. Then Samuel said unto Saul, Stay, and I will tell thee what the Lord hath said unto me this night. And he said unto him, Say on. Samuel said, When thou wast a little in thine own sight, and it goes on and on. Take a look down at verse 19. Saul rehearses and reminds Saul where he came from. Wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord, but didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord? And Saul said unto Samuel, Yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord, and have gone the way which the Lord sent me, and have brought Agag the king of Amalek, and have utterly destroyed the Amalekites. But the people took of the spoil sheep and oxen, and the chief of the things which should have been utterly destroyed, to sacrifice unto the Lord thy God in Gilgal. I would like to say one of the first things, the kind of an overriding umbrella that you have to remember about Saul when we're talking about all these things is this. Saul's a little dense. Listen, Samuel gave Saul very clear instructions. Go kill the Amalekites, man, woman, child, everything, all the cattle, wipe them out. And Saul goes out, and he doesn't do it. And then Saul, the Lord has to have this little chat with Samuel and talk about how bad Saul messed up. Samuel goes, and Samuel confronts Saul. And Samuel walks up, and he confronts Saul, and take a look at verse 15, verse 16. Then Samuel said unto Saul, Stay, and I will tell thee what the Lord hath said to me this night. Now, the Lord just got through telling Samuel, how disappointed he was in Saul, right? To the point that Samuel winds up crying all night long. This is not a pleasant picture for Samuel by any means. For Samuel, this was a very heartbreaking experience, a gut-wrenching night. I mean, Samuel sat there all night long and wept bitterly because somebody that, quite frankly, he cared about, and somebody that was the king of Israel, had messed up to the point that God now has to go in and deal with Saul. Don't you know Samuel went to Saul that morning with a very heavy heart? And let me ask you this. When somebody comes to you and they're very heavy, they have got a burden on their shoulder, there's just something that's weighing them down, can't you normally see it in their face? Yes. It's pretty evident. Body language, oftentimes we misunderstand that or misread it. I got it. But in general, somebody comes to you with a heavy heart, and they come walking in, and they say, oh, Michael, we got to talk. He's going, what's going on, right? And he knows there's something wrong. Not Saul. Samuel comes up to Saul, and he's got this burden. He's been crying all night. He probably lack of sleep. I'm sure he looks tired. I'm sure he looks pretty rough. He's not in a good mood. And he comes up to Saul, and Saul is just kind of jovial. And Samuel says, let me tell you what the Lord said. And Saul goes, say on. Like, okay, yes, tell me what a great job I did. Brethren, he's kind of dense. He doesn't get it. Now, you can debate, and I'm sure there's cases where, both apply, whether it was willful or whether it was just ignorant. But nonetheless, Samuel comes up to Saul, and Saul is just completely clueless about what is going on here. I think he expects to be given accolades by Samuel for what a great job he did. Saul's demise. One of the notable things about Saul is this. Saul was too dense to see the problem. And like I said, when I was struggling with this, what to title this and how to go this direction, and started looking at Saul, I thought to myself, I'll title this, I Thank God I'm Not Like Saul. The problem with that is, every time I read through 1 Samuel and read about Saul, you know what I do? I see myself from chapter 9 to about chapter 26 over and over and over again. It's really bothersome. It really troubles me when I go through and I look at some of the characteristics of Saul, and I realize I make that same mistake more than I care to admit. Amen? But Saul's got the Samuel, the prophet, coming up before him, and Saul's kind of oblivious to what's going on. He doesn't get it. He's a little dense. He's slow to understand. He's slow to learn. He doesn't see the problem. Take a look at verse 19. Verse 19, Samuel says this, "Wherefore then didst thou not obey the voice of the Lord, but didst fly upon the spoil, and didst evil in the sight of the Lord?" Now, from a preacher's perspective, that's pretty plain. I don't think there's any question about what Samuel is trying to impart to Saul. Right? What is Saul's response? And Saul said unto Samuel, "Yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord." Again, overriding umbrella for everything that we're going to be talking about, Saul cannot take very plain, very direct, very simple, in this case, preaching, and apply it to himself. So there's a lot of things that Saul messed up on. There's a lot of things that we can look at, and a lot of things we'll probably take a look at, but I want you to keep this in mind. The overall umbrella is that even when Samuel, the prophet of God, you got to admit, a pretty major prophet in the Old Testament, right? He's walking with the Lord. The Lord's, the Lord is talking with Samuel. Samuel has a good heart about this whole thing. Samuel is brokenhearted because Saul now has messed up. Samuel doesn't have a chip on his shoulder against Saul. Samuel's not out to get Saul. Samuel is brokenhearted, and he goes to Saul and says, "Hey, listen, here is what you did. God told you to kill Agag, kill everybody, everything. And the bottom line is, Saul, you didn't do it." And Saul goes, "Yeah, I've obeyed God." A little dense. I think one of the biggest problems that Saul had is even when God was trying to deal with him very plain, very direct, very simply, Saul either refused or couldn't see it. And I'll grant you, he did both. I don't want to be like Saul. Sometimes I'm like Saul, but I don't want to be like Saul.
Amen.
All right? You come in here, you know what I'm thankful for? I'm thankful that I've got a book right there that I can go in and listen, I can read about Saul and I can go, that's a danger I have to watch out for. Amen. That's a danger you have to watch out for. What is it? You hear great preaching all the time. How many guys, well, you don't have to show me a show of hands, but how many of you listened to multiple sermons this week on the radio or Final Fight or something like that? Probably many of you. Right? How many actually really got to you? You know, we like hearing good preaching because of the great illustrations, good stories, and all these things that go in, you know, that come along with good preaching. But the danger is sometimes the Lord's trying to deal with us about something and we're a little slow to learn. Doesn't mean we can't. You'll see Saul had plenty of opportunity. But the overriding umbrella that Saul's operating under is when the man of God goes directly to him and talks to him, his mind's off in left field. He must be talking about somebody else because me, I've obeyed. I'm doing well. Look at all my medals and pins. I'm the king. I'm following the will of the Lord. Saul had a problem. He was too dense to see the problems, and he couldn't apply preaching to himself. You ever known Christians like that? I've known some guys that are, experts. They could rattle off preachers' names, listen to them on the internet 500 gazillion times. And they're one hard cookie to crack. You can't get to their heart. It's a danger we Bible believers have to watch out for. Because we become so familiar with the Bible, it starts to lose its edge. That's what happened to Saul. It's good to watch out for that. And on top of all that, along that same line, he said, yea, I have obeyed the voice of the Lord. Saul, in the midst of getting hit, quite frankly, right between the eyes by Samuel, stands up and goes, I'm right. I've done right. I'm right. Everybody else is wrong. Like I said, little dense, doesn't get it. It doesn't sink in. Saul's got opportunities along the way to correct that. The question is he going to or not? Like I said, I go through, every time I read through and read about Saul, I'm going, oh man, oh, ouch, oh Lord, really? Am I really like that? Because you and I can be the same way. Saul swore up and down he was right. As the saying goes, I'm sure Samuel probably originated this right back here. I'm sure it's in the original Hebrew. What part of no don't you understand? I told you to go and smite the Amalekites, utterly destroy all they have. I mean, is that, Elizabethan English too complicated to understand? I'm sure it was just as easy in Hebrew. The Bible says in Proverbs, it says this, it says, whoso loveth instruction, loveth knowledge. Amen. Amen. But he that hateth reproof is brutish. You see, when it comes to the Lord dealing with us, when it comes to what is it that made Saul fail, what is it that was the demise of Saul, listen, Saul was a little dense when it came to God dealing directly with him. He could certainly yell about a whole lot of other people, but he wasn't so quick when it came to God dealing with him. And one of the principles you find in the Bible is if you're going to get instruction, if you're going to learn, if you're going to be taught, their instruction and reproof are like, they're tied together in your Bible. Say, I don't like somebody to tell me that I'm wrong. Chances are you're probably not going to learn much then. Because how would you even know if no one tells you? Right? Proverbs 15 says, he that refuseth instruction despiseth his own soul, but he that heareth reproof getteth understanding. If Saul had listened to that reproof, oh, Samuel, you're right. What on earth was I thinking? He is the king after all. Don't the people follow him? What was I thinking? If Samuel had changed that thing around, if he heard the reproof, he would have gotten understanding. Things would have been a lot clearer to him. If Saul had listened to that reproof, listen, a lot of Saul's decisions as king would have been different. Why? Because he would have gained some understanding. He wouldn't have made some of the mistakes he made. But the overriding umbrella is you can't tell Saul anything because Saul thinks he's right. Poverty and shame shall be to him that refuseth instruction, but he that regardeth reproof shall be honored, the Bible says. Just by taking a little bit of reproof, the Lord looks at that. I don't know why the Lord set it up that way, other than we hate it. Other than it goes against our grain and every fiber of our being just doesn't like to be told where we're wrong. But when somebody pays heed to that, the Lord looks at that thing and goes, there's something I can work with. Amen? And the biggest problem I think that Saul had was that direct, simple, plain preaching had no effect on him. Just wouldn't make him change. He thought he was right. He was convinced. He didn't even see the mistakes he had made. Yeah, I have fulfilled the commandment of the Lord. In Proverbs, after not listening to the father's wisdom and getting himself in a mess, this young man comes to this conclusion in Proverbs 5. And say, how have I hated instruction, and my heart despised reproof. That man that wound up in a mess looks back on things, and the conclusion that is drawn, my problem was that I hated instruction. I didn't want to be taught, and I despised reproof. I didn't want to be told I was doing something wrong. I'm just going to wander through the streets of the city and chase whatever needs to be chased, and everything will be fine. But it didn't work out so well. But he tied it in with hating reproof. Saul missed it. Saul missed it. Saul was dense. Light didn't get through to him because he was dense. There's another thing. I better hurry. Saul, this is going to be a series, by the way, because we're not going to do all these. Saul lacked discernment. Go back to chapter 9. Chapter 9, we'll start taking a look at Saul. And like I said, as we go through and look at some of the characteristics that caused Saul's demise, I'd like you to remember that the umbrella of this whole thing was Saul was a little dense. He was slow to learn. He was thick-headed. He did not let the Lord get through to hear, even when it was plain and direct, even when the person that brought it to him It was very heartfelt. He was very concerned. He loved him. But he had to tell him the truth. So let's take a look at Saul. Saul, the demise of Saul. There's another thing. Saul lacked discernment. Discernment is the quality of being able to grasp and comprehend things that are obscure. It's being able to look at a situation and see into it a little deeper than maybe what's on the surface. If you want to talk about people that lack discernment, just take a look at the voting record in the United States. You can apply that either side, whichever way you go. But you have to admit there's a lot of people that on the surface make up their mind without really looking in depth into what's really going on. Right? Saul lacked discernment. Discernment is the act of perceiving something. It's the ability to judge people as well as people and things well. It's the ability to look at that situation, analyze it, and come to the right conclusion. To see beyond the facade and to be able to, to make an in-depth assessment of what's going on. Take a look at 1 Samuel 9. Take a look down at chapter 18. I know we read this. So Saul goes to the town. He's looking for the seer. Saul drew near unto Samuel in the gate and said, "Tell me, I pray thee, where the seer's house is." And Samuel said unto Saul, "I am the seer." All right? We're talking about the demise of Saul. Saul's demise, right? So under that umbrella, we talked about just being a little dense. I'd like to say that, to start off, one of the first things I notice about Saul is that, you know what? He didn't have any discernment. Yeah. Now, all the people knew Samuel. Samuel was a major figure in Israel. Saul goes up to the city and says, Saul's servant knows of Samuel. Saul goes up and, "Hey, where's the seer at?" "Oh, he's over here. This is what he does. He's there every time that he offers a sacrifice, and he goes and the people won't eat until he's blessed the food," and on and on and on. Everybody knows about Samuel except Saul. Saul lacked discernment. He comes face to face with the man of God, and he doesn't even know it. Obviously, he had never seen Samuel before. But Saul goes, how many times have you seen somebody that maybe you go to church with them, maybe you listen to a message with them, maybe you think, "Oh, there's this message be great," or you're sitting in a service and this would really, really, really help somebody. And they sit down and they haven't even got a clue of what's going on. They don't get it. Saul comes face to face with the man of God, and he doesn't even know it's a man of God. What caused Saul's demise? Brethren, he couldn't discern spiritual things. He couldn't pick up the simplest, the most simple, basic. In Ephesians 4:14 it says that we henceforth be no more children tossed to and fro, carried about with every wind of doctrine, by the sleight of men, by the cunning craftiness whereby they lie in wait to deceive. Saul fell for it every time. Couldn't get it. Spurgeon said this. He said, "Discernment is knowing the difference is not knowing the difference between right and wrong. It is knowing the difference between right and almost right." See, what are you after? You're after, what are we after? Why do we come? Why do we listen to preaching? Why do we have this book? I have this book so that I can look at Saul and see the mistakes that he made, so that when I'm almost right, it can trigger something in my brain and go, "Whoa, careful. Careful. That's not the way to go." That's what Saul did. And I can avoid it. I'm thankful for that, brethren. I'm thankful the Lord took those things and put them in the Bible, as unsavory as they are to our palate sometimes. As much as we do not like to have to deal with that, I am so thankful that I can go to that book and give myself a checkup, a diagnostics, right? And just say, okay, am I being like Saul? Saul lacked discernment. He didn't even know that he was in the presence of the man of God. You come into church and, of course I would say this because I'm the pastor, be that as it may. But if you go into a church, any church, but you come into a church like this one where the Bible's being preached and there's not something different that stands out about it, there's not this sense where the Holy Spirit is touching what's going on, you need to do a double check. Amen? And I'm not saying, Brother Spurgeon, I'm not saying anything about me, but I'd like to think that the Lord is present, that the Lord uses His Word, that the Lord honors His Word, and when we come in here for this, that all of us are affected by the Word of God. Amen. You don't get that everywhere. If you detect that, if you pick that up, that's a good thing. You say, the Lord's dealing with me. The Lord's doing something. But for Saul, didn't get it. Didn't get it. 2 Timothy, for of this sort are they which creep into houses and lead captive silly women laden in sins, led away with divers lusts. The devil's out there to get you off track any way he possibly can. Discernment. Discernment, it says this, when we're mature in discernment, we overcome deception. I thought that was kind of interesting. Saul never made it there. You know, one of the things you and I gain when we come in and we hear preaching and we apply it to ourselves and we read that book and we spend time in prayer and we learn and we study the precepts of God, and we don't know everything, but the more you grow, the more you learn, the more you exercise your senses, the more discernment you gain, the more you're going to be able to distinguish between right and almost right, the better off you are. Saul could have used that, but he didn't. I don't think he even wanted it. The demise of Saul. Saul definitely lacked discernment. Solomon, on the other hand, said, "Give thy servant an understanding heart to judge thy people." Lord, give me wisdom. That's my constant prayer, is give me wisdom and discernment on how to minister to your people. Amen. All right, so Saul lacked discernment. I'll tell you another thing about Saul. Saul was dishonest. Take a look at 1 Samuel chapter 10. 1 Samuel chapter 10. Saul goes, he has this interaction with Samuel. Samuel anoints him to be king. Saul, at this point, should be flying high, right? Saul should be thinking, whoa, man, what's going on? And he may not understand it all. He may even still be a little bit of, maybe a little unsure. I would expect that. That would be perfectly normal. But Saul gets back, and he comes back into, to his town. Take a look down at verse 10 and chapter 10, verse 15. And Saul's uncle, look at verse 14. And Saul's uncle said unto him and to his servant, "Whither went ye?" And he said, "To seek the asses. And when we saw that they were nowhere, we came to Samuel." And Saul's uncle said, "Tell me, I pray thee, what Samuel said unto you." And Saul said unto his uncle, "He told us plainly the asses were found. But of the matter of the kingdom whereof Samuel spake, he told him not." The demise of Saul. Saul starts off, he's just been told that he's going to be king. You would think in his mind, he would start prepping himself, going, I've got to rise to the occasion. I may not be ready for it. I'm just, a nobody in the tribe of Benjamin. Who am I? But the Lord chose him to be king. He's anointed by Samuel. And he gets back, and his uncle comes up to his family, his own family. We're not even talking some stranger on the street that maybe he's a little hesitant to relay this information to. Somebody in his own family comes up to him and says, hey, Saul, where you been? How's things going? What went on? Hey, we went and we saw Samuel. Oh, yeah, what did he tell you? And Saul gives his own uncle half-truth. He lies. Starting off his career as king, lying to his uncle. You ever find yourself in a place where you catch yourself? Maybe you catch yourself at the point of just contemplating. Maybe I should just stretch the truth a little bit because it would make the situation a lot easier to get through. Right? Maybe I shouldn't tell my wife exactly where I was at, what I was doing. Maybe I shouldn't tell my mom and dad that it was me that wrote on the wall with crayons. Maybe I shouldn't, right? And you think to yourself for just a moment, maybe it'd be better off if I didn't tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth. What is that? Well, we're in danger of making some of the same mistakes Saul made. Saul's got no reason to hide it. Okay, maybe he's a little afraid. Maybe he doesn't comprehend everything yet. But he starts off with his own uncle. Half-truths, lies. Just kind of hiding the important parts because somebody won't think poorly of me then. Colossians 3:9 says, lie not one to another, saying that ye have put off the old man with his deeds. What caused Saul's demise? Again, you got the big umbrella, right? Just little dents. Preaching did not affect him. Saul lacked discernment. He couldn't see through the reality of things. And Saul goes down this road, and things just keep multiplying in Saul's character. And now Saul's to the point where even to his own family, he doesn't have any heartburn at all about lying to him. I said, Lord, I thank thee that I'm not like Saul. But if I don't watch it, I sure can be. If I'm not careful, me, yes, the pastor, can wind up doing the same things. I get under conviction every single time I read about Saul. I hate reading about him. I'm like Jehu with a penknife. Cut it out. Right? Why? Because I see myself, and I don't like some of the things I see in myself. But I'm thankful they're there, yeah. Amen, or owe me something, right? But I'm thankful they're there because it keeps me in check, brethren. It keeps me honest. When I go through and read through them again, I get a chance to look at it and go, oh, I found that one's crept in a little bit since the last time I read this passage. Maybe it's time for a tune-up. Praise the Lord for that. Praise the Lord. Saul's dishonest. I may be able to get these next 2 points in. We'll see. Take a look at chapter 11. Verse so then comes verse 1, then comes Nahash the Ammonite, and he came up and he encamped against Jabesh Gilead, and all the men of Jabesh said unto Nahash, make a covenant with us, and we will serve thee. And Nahash the Ammonite answered them, on this condition will I make a covenant with you, that I may thrust out all your right eyes and lay it for a reproach upon Israel. So Nahash comes in, and he's attacking this town, and the town is scared, and They try to make peace with him, and he says, all right, I'll make peace with you, but first I'm going to put out your right eyes. Why? You can't, it's kind of hard to shoot a bow and arrow if you're right eye dominant with your right eye gone. And long story short, they say, whoa, wait, that's a little extreme. They call for help. Saul finds out about this, and Saul says, basically Saul's king now, and he comes to the rescue of these people. And so Saul actually, does something in light of all this pretty good here. And that's what's going on. Take a look down at verse 9. And they said unto the messengers that came, thus shall ye say unto the men of Jabesh Gilead, tomorrow by that time the sun be hot, ye shall have help. And the messengers came and showed it to the men of Jabesh, and they were glad. So, all right, here we go, we're getting help. Take a look down at verse 12. The people said unto Samuel, who is he that said, shall Saul reign over us? Bring the men that we may put him to death. So, in verse 10, the men of Jabesh are looking forward to that help. In verse 11, it was so on the morrow that Saul put the people in 3 companies, and they came into the midst of the host in the morning watch, and slew the Ammonites until the heat of the day. And it came to pass that they which remained were scattered, so that 2 of them were not left together. And the people said unto Samuel, who is he that said, shall Saul reign over us? Bring them in that we may put him to death. So you got a bunch of people who've just been delivered, and now they're on board with Saul. Hey, this guy's great. This guy's incredible. This guy's phenomenal. He just delivered us from getting our right eyes put out. Saul is the man. Who was it that didn't want Saul to be king? Because remember, there's a whole bunch of people didn't want Saul to be king. And they said, we're going to kill him. Let's put him to death. And Saul said in verse 13, there shall not a man be put to death this day, for today the Lord hath wrought salvation in Israel. Then said Samuel to the people, come, let us go to Gilgal and renew the kingdom there. I'd like to say this. What caused Saul's demise? Saul experienced just enough victory to give him a big head. I mean, the whole thing with Agag kind of didn't go so well, right? Well, now we come up with the men of Jabesh, and he delivers them, and the people of Jabesh want to kill all the folks that didn't like Saul. Saul stands up. No one's going to die today. The Lord hath brought a great victory in Israel. I bet his head was just... I don't know how genuine that was from Saul. I think there's an element, even in Saul's victories here, where he stood up and said that. He probably weighed in the balances, considered it, and said, you know what? If I show a little bit of mercy here, they'll think I'm great. And I think even in a victory, Saul's underlying attitude was probably still questionable. I think there's an element of deceitfulness. And I say that because he did the same thing in other places. We don't have time to go into a lot of those. But when it served Saul's purpose, there was this appearance of being noble and spiritual. And the Lord hath wrought a great victory. I think one of the things that led to Saul's demise was even when Saul experienced some victories, there was an element of deceit in the background. And he used them for his own purpose. How often as a preacher, you see some things go on. You think, oh, the congregation, this, and you're going, oh man, that's great. And if you're not careful, if I'm not careful, I can look at those things and start to give myself credit for what's happening instead of God credit. Amen? I think there was an element of deceit when it came to Saul, and even in the good times, he was always looking for that angle to make himself look good. Because he didn't want to appear unsavory in the sight of the people in any way, shape, or form. He's deceptive. Everything he did was about himself to make himself look good. And I'll hit this one and we'll be done. Take a look at, oops, I forgot to give you the deceptive. And I really like that slide too. Now that we're through with that one, I think Saul lacked direction. Take a look at chapter 12, verse 13. Now Samuel, when he's getting ready, starts the people off right. Samuel goes out of his way to set the nation of Israel up, to give them the background and to let the nation of Israel know, hey, you guys need to follow the Lord your God. Don't be swerving this direction, that direction. You guys need to follow the Lord. If you follow the Lord, then things will go well. So Samuel sets all that up. And in verse 13, chapter 12, verse 13, now therefore, behold, the king whom ye have chosen and whom ye have desired, and behold, the Lord hath set a king over you. If ye will fear the Lord and serve him and obey his voice and not rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then shall both ye and also the king that reigneth over you continue following the Lord your God. But if ye will not obey the voice of the Lord, but rebel against the commandment of the Lord, then shall the hand of the Lord be against you as it was against your fathers. Take a look down at verse 18. So Samuel called unto the Lord, and the Lord sent thunder and rain, and all the people greatly feared the Lord and Samuel. The people know Samuel's, he's on track. The Lord's with him. Right? So let me ask you this. Samuel sets things up for Saul, directs the people towards the Lord God, reminds them, hey, if you don't follow God, there's some bad things that are going to happen. Samuel does all these things. Saul now ascends to the throne. How many revivals do you ever hear taking place under Saul? How many times do you see Saul legitimately going out and leading the people to worship and serve God? Samuel set this whole thing up. Samuel warned all the people. Samuel talked to all the people. Samuel, let the people know, hey, if you guys follow God, you, listen, and the king will be all right. The Lord will bless, the Lord will take care of you. Saul knows this. Saul takes over the kingdom. He's now king. And Saul does not bother to go about and lead his people in the way that they should be led. All right, we know all these things about the Lord. Listen, how often do we go about our business of encouraging and leading and helping others in the right way? See, that's a mistake that Saul made. You say, what was the demise of Saul? Even when somebody handed him on basically a silver platter the right answers for spiritual success, Saul didn't prompt and prod and lead and direct his people in the spiritual way. As I'm a parent, I think of that. Obviously, as a pastor, I have to think of that all the time. But even if you're younger than that, just growing up, the Lord's given you this spiritual heritage. The Lord's given you a Bible. The Lord's allowed you to be in a place where you could learn the Bible in Sunday school and preaching. And now the Lord sets this thing in front of you, even as a young man, young woman, and says, okay, you've been given this. If you do right, the Lord will bless it. If you don't, he won't. And how many young people fail to lead themselves, much less anybody else, in the right direction? Saul's king. He knows all this, and Saul lets the spiritual obligations of a leader slip through the crack. That didn't have to happen. Saul knew better. But you see how everything is kind of under this umbrella of Saul didn't let the preaching affect him. I bet Samuel sat there with that group, with that nation of Israel, and said, hey, if you do all this, if you do all this, if you do all this, God will bless you. If you don't, here's what's going to happen. Saul probably sat in the congregation, listened to all of it, and went, phew. Because he sure didn't act on it. That's why I said, the umbrella, a little dense, slow to learn. It started affecting everything. And it affected Saul in the realm of leadership. He didn't take his people in the right direction. Zig Ziglar said this, lack of direction, not lack of time is the problem. We all have 24 hours in a day. I thought that was pretty good. So here we are. I'll close things down. We're done. Saul's demise started off with this umbrella, a little dense. Even plain, simple, direct preaching doesn't apply to me. Samuel must be talking about somebody else because I did it right. Brethren, that sets up the mindset for all this other stuff. And we talked about his lack of discernment, how he found himself being dishonest even to those closest around him, how he was deceptive. He used even his victories in a way that bolstered himself because he was so afraid to look bad in front of everybody else. And we found out that he didn't use his leadership to take the people in the direction God wanted them to go. And that's just the beginning. There's probably some more. Let's bow our heads for a word of prayer. Father, thank you for an opportunity here just to go over a few of these things. As I mentioned before, Lord, it is always convicting when I read about Saul. Father, so many of those things in little ways can creep into our lives and they can beset us. Father, we find ourselves falling back into things that maybe we had victory over before, but they seem to roll back around. The devil sure knows how to use them. But Father, I do sincerely pray this, that you'd help us to learn from this book and to try to avoid some of the pitfalls that made Saul such a disaster spiritually. Help us, Father, to overcome those things, to be aware of them, and Father, to shoot for higher ground. I pray these things in Jesus' name. Amen.